Hi, welcome to Mr. Hansen Math. I'm Mr. Hansen. Let me help you with some math. Today we're going to solve one-step equations, but this is going to be a part 2 video. Part 2 video, I have actually 3-part video. In my part 1 video, I'll put a link right here. In my part 1 video, which you should see first, because if you just dive into this one, you're going to be in over your head, to be honest. So watch my part 1 video. I explain how to do the steps. But it's relatively simple problems, very straightforward problems. That's why I do all the steps. For plus, minus, times, and divide, I do all 4 operators. And then in my part 2 video, I'm going to deal with fractions and decimals, some more negatives and some fractions, and that's what I'm going to deal with. This is going to be the part 2 video, and that's this video right now. If you need to see part 1, click on this link. Okay, if you need to see the part 3 video, I'll put a link over here somewhere for the part 3 video, and that's where I put the X in the wrong spot. It's not on the left. See, I always put the X on the left. This one's not on the left, it's in the middle. Sometimes I'll put it all the way on the right. It's on the wrong side of the equation. I put negatives and fractions. It's going to be on the wrong side of the equation, but the right side of that side, all kinds of more complicated stuff. So this video is part 2. I'm just going to take this video, ramp it up to this level, and then if you get more complicated, then I want you to watch part 3, and in a part 3 video, I'll take you. Bottom line is, if you want to pause the video, just pause the video right now. Look at what you need to learn, and go to that video. This one's part 2. This one, let's dive in. As always, just like in my part 1 video, is we're going to solve every one-step equation by using the opposite operator, but the same number. We're going to be using the opposite operator, but the same number. Opposite operator, same number. And just like the other ones, what is an operator? An operator is a plus, minus, times, divide. There's a lot more math operators. Believe me, there's a lot of math operators. The only ones you need for one steps is plus, minus, times, and divide. And just like in that first video, part 1, the opposite of plus is minus or subtract, and the opposite of subtract is plus or add. The opposite of times is divide, and the opposite of divide is times. So let's get started with the fractions. X plus 1/2. X plus 1/2 equals the 2. You got to figure out what that secret number is. I'm going to call it an unknown quantity, because that's what it's called. Your teacher will call it a variable. Your teacher's wrong. Sometimes X is a variable, sometimes it's an unknown quantity. It's a bit sticky. I'm not going to define it here. But the bottom line is I'm going to refer to it as an unknown quantity, but I will admit that your teacher's probably going to call it a variable. But I'm not going to do it. Just because your teacher does it, just because your teacher's wrong, doesn't mean I got to be wrong. So I have an unknown quantity. I don't know what this number is, but when I add 1/2 to it, I will get 2. I want you to think of it. Before we even solve it, I want you to think about it. What is a secret number? I got a number that when I add 1/2 to it, I will get 2. I think it's 1/2. If you have 1/2 and you add another 1/2, you'll have 2. So the answer is 1/2 or 3/2. But let's solve it performing the opposite operator. The opposite operator is plus, minus, times, divide, and then perform the opposite. Okay, I see plus, the opposite is minus, but I gotta use the same number. Opposite operator, same number. So instead of plus 1/2, I'm gonna go to minus 1/2. I'm not gonna explain why I'm using 1/2 and not 2. I explained that in part 1 video, which I told you to watch. If this is confusing and you don't understand it, you need to watch part 1. Okay, so let's get started. But if I'm minus 1/2 to that side of the equation, I got minus 1/2 to that side of the equation. So minus 1/2. And same thing, you gotta watch the video to understand what happens. Part 1 on the video. Okay, so plus 1/2 minus 1/2 is 0. Anytime you add and subtract the same number, that equals 0. X plus 0 equals X. Any number plus 0 is itself. So that's X. This cancels, that's why we did it. And then now we got to go 2 minus 1/2. 2 minus 1/2 is 1/2 or 3/2. But in case you watched, hopefully, my adding and subtracting fractions video, my subtraction particularly video, I'm going to put this over 1, take a peek to both sides, times by 2 over 2, times by 1 over 1. 2 times 2 is 4, 2 times 1 is 2, minus 1 times 1 is 1, 2 times 1 is 2, 2 pen strokes, 4 good guys and 1 bad guy, that's tree, and then 2, keep that the same, 3/2, just like we thought. Again, if this was confusing, go watch my subtracting fractions video. You'll understand. I'll put up subtracting fractions right here. Subtracting fractions. I'm assuming you already know how to do this. If you don't know how to do this, you can't do 1-steps. You got to know how to subtract fractions. That's why I made the videos. Okay, anyway, I'm moving on because I got to focus on part 2. I'm moving on. If you don't know how to do this, add, subtract fractions, multiply. I was doing multiply fractions in here. You got to watch those videos. Okay. Let's do V plus 1.6 equals 4.3. Okay, why did I change it from X to V? Why did I change it? Well, the thing is, most math people, when they have a secret number, an unknown quantity or a variable or something, they use X. And if they use too many X's, then they'll start using Y's, and they do Z's, and they run out of alphabet. For some reason, they started at the end. And you got all these other letters, A through, whatever, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z, whatever that letter is, Z, Y, X, W, A through W, they're not even using. They start at X, Y, Z, out of letters. Where are we going to go? Well, the bottom line is you can use any letter of the alphabet. I'm going to start using letters that are not X, just so you're comfortable with it, because you will see them, and I want you to be comfortable with them and not intimidated by them. So if I put X, or if I put V, or if I put A or M, there's not a big deal. Just pretend they're all X's. It's just an unknown quantity. It's the letter of the alphabet that stands for a secret number. Secret till we find out, but we're going to find out by doing the opposite operator. Same number. Okay, I see a plus, the opposite is minus. I see a 1.6, that's the same number. Opposite operator, but the same number. So 1.6, but if you subtract 1.6 from this side of the equation, you guys subtract 1.6 from this side of the equation. Whatever you find one side of the equation, you do the other side of the equation. Okay, it's minus 1.6, so minus 1.6. Plus 1.6 minus 1.6 is 0. V plus 0 is V. Any number plus 0 is just itself, that whatever you started with. And then 5.3 minus 1.6 is probably 2.7, maybe, I don't know. 3.7, 2.7. I think that's 2.7. Okay, and that's my answer. That's my answer. You guys, one steps, they're not bad. They're not bad. I don't care if it's fractions, I don't care if it's decimals. Just deal with it. Okay, a minus 2/3. Let's get started. A minus 2/3 equals 5/3. And again, maybe even before we get started, see if you can think of the number. Think of a secret number that when you take away 2/3, you're left with 5/3. So what would be a secret number when you take away 2/3, you get 5/3? I think it's centards. If I had centards, and I subtracted 2/3, I'd have 5/3. But the bottom line is, let's do opposite operator. So opposite operator, same number. The operator is minus this time. The opposite of plus is minus, the opposite of minus is plus. The opposite of times is divided, the opposite of divided is times. So the opposite of minus is plus, and the same number though, 2/3. 2/3. And if you're wondering why I do 2/3 and not 5/3, you need to watch my other video. My part one, I explained why I'm doing 2/3 and not 5/3. If that's confusing to you, you watch part one. You're not confused. Okay, but whatever you do one side of the equation, you gotta do the same thing on the other side of the equation. Plus 2/3, I got a plus 2/3. Okay, minus 2/3 plus 2/3 is 0, and an a minus 0 is a. And here I got 5/3 plus 2/3 from my add fractions video. You know the add denominators. 5 plus 2 is sin, and then to keep the denominator the same terds. So 5/3 plus 2/3 is centards. That's the answer. And that's what we thought. Centards minus 2/3 is 5/3. Okay. How about e minus 5/5 equals the 8? E minus 5/5 equals the 8. Your teacher might give you a problem that looks like this. You got fractions and whole numbers. Got them mixed up. I don't care. I don't care. Do you think I care? Yeah, I don't care. Okay, opposite operator, same number. I got a minus 5/5, I need a plus 5/5. Plus 5/5. But if you plus 5/5 to that side, you got plus 5/5 to that side. Do the same thing to both sides, plus 5/5. Minus 5/5 plus 5/5 is 0. E minus 0 is E. Now I got to go 8 plus 5/5. How do you do whole numbers plus a fraction? Well, the bottom line is you got to go to my adding fractions video. You'll know to put this over 1 and then take a peek to both sides. This boy looks at this girl, she's a 5, so that means times by 5 over 5. And this girl looks at that boy, he's a 1. He's a 1, so times this by 1 over 1. And then multiply straight across, SA, multiply fractions video. So 5 times 8 is 30. 5 times 1 is 5. Bring down plus, always bring down plus. 5 times 1 is 5. 5 times 1 is 5. I got 35 plus 5/5. Well, guess what that is? That's 35/5. That's my answer, 35/5. 35/5 minus 5/5 is 35. And 40 divided by 5 is 8. Check your answer. Okay, I think you got that stuff. It's always the times and maybe the divide that's going to be difficult. So let's deal with that right now. 1/2 m equals 10. 1/2 m equals 10. Okay, let's find the operator. I don't see a plus, I don't see a minus. It's either times or divide. Now, you got to understand this. This is the trick right here. And that's why I put it in part 2, because it requires extra explanation. I didn't want to clog up that other video with explanation. This one is where if you got problems like this is where you got to listen to me. I see that that's a divide by sign. 1/2 is really 1 divided by 2. I get it, but you got to look past that. 1/2 is a number. It's like glued together. 1/2 is a number, and whenever I told you, whenever I said I have a number touching a variable or an unknown quantity, a letter of the alphabet, there's always an implied multiplication there, and that's the operator that you need to see. You need to think of 1/2 as a number. I know it's a fraction. I know it's a divide, 1 divided by 2. I know it. I'm aware. But you got to realize this fraction is touching this letter of the alphabet. When you have a number touching the letter of the alphabet, if that number's positive or negative, fraction, decimal, whole number, I don't care. If there's a number touching a letter of the alphabet, there's a multiply in between. And that's the thing we got to get rid of, is that times. We get rid of the times by performing the opposite operator, which is divide. So I'm going to divide this side of the equation, which means I have to divide this side of the equation. Do whatever you do to both sides. Okay, and the same number. So instead of times 1/2, I'm going to go divide by 1/2. But if you divide that side of the equation by 1/2, you got to divide that side of the equation by 1/2. Okay, what is 1/2 divided by 1/2? I hope right now at this point you know that any number divided by itself equals 1. Any number except for 0. So any number, any non-zero number divided by itself equals 1. That's why we did it. The reason we had times 1/2, the reason we did divide by 1/2 is because we would cancel it. Opposite operator, same number. So times 1/2 divided by 1/2, that cancels to 1, not to 0. Again, this cancels to 1. Any number divided by itself is 1. Times m, 1 times m is m. And then 10 divided by 1/2, you got to go to divide by inverse fractions to do this. Invert and multiply. If you remember what I said, invert and multiply. Invert means upside down. Invert and multiply. So instead of 1 over 2, I'm going to put 2 over 1, and I'm going to multiply. Well, I have a whole number times a fraction. I need to put that sucker over 1 and multiply straight across, SA. 10 times 2 is 20. And then 1 times 1 is 1. The answer is 20. The answer is 20, because 20 divided by 1 equals 20. And you could check it. 1/2 times 20 equals 10. Sure enough, 1/2 of 20 equals 10. But that was a lot of work. That was a lot of work. I had multiply fractions, I had divide by fractions, I had invert and multiply. If you don't know how to do that, go watch my fractions videos. Okay, but I will do some more of these because I understand that they're complicated. I will do some more. Let's get started right now. 3/4 V equals 16. 3/4 V equals 16. Okay, what operator do you have? I don't see a plus, I don't see a minus, I don't see a times, I don't see a divide. Well, actually, I do see a divide, but it's not divide. Just think of that fraction off to the side. Think of that fraction off to the side. The actual operator is that multiply right there. And whenever you have a number touching a letter of the alphabet, and there's a multiply in between them, and so opposite operator, same number. The opposite of times 3/4 is divide by 3/4. If I divide that side by 3/4, I got to divide that side by 3/4. 3/4. Okay, any number divided by itself is 1. I'm going to cancel it. And then 1 times V is V. And here I got to invert and multiply. Instead of 3/4, I'm going to put farthirds. I got to invert and multiply. 16 is a whole number, so I'm going to put it over 1 and multiply straight across. 16 times far is 60 far. And then 1 times 3 is 3. The answer is 60 farthirds. V equals 60 farthirds. Let's do a couple more of these multiplies before I get into divides. So let's do a couple more multiplies before I get into some divides. Let's say 3/10 K equals 9. 3/10 K equals 9. Okay, I'm going to see a multiply right there. I'm going to divide this side by 3/10. That means I got to divide this side by 3/10. The heck is that? So 3/10 divided by 3/10 is Juan. Juan times K is K. And then 9 divided by 3/10, I got to invert and multiply. And so 3 divided by 10, I'm going to put 10 divided by 3. And then to multiply, this is a whole number, so divide by 1. 9 times 10 is 90. And 1 times 3 is 3. 90 divided by 3 is 30. The answer is 30. Okay, let's get into some divides. Let's get into divide. If you need some help, go click back on the video a little bit. Let's get into some divide. Let's say I have F divided by 3/10. All that equals the 21. F divided by the quantity 3/10 equals 21. Okay, well, I already told you we're going to divide, so I guess that's the operator. We've already done plus, minus, and times, so this is the big fraction. You notice I made this one bigger. You'll see that this one, fraction bar is bigger, and that means that's the big fraction bar, and you're dividing by a fraction. So dividing by a fraction, the opposite of divide is times. So the opposite of divide is times, and just like in part 1 video, if you watch that part 1 video, if you had to divide by 2, you'd put times 2, but I told you to put it up in the numerator. I told you to put it up in the numerator. So instead of divide by 3/10, I'm going to times by 3/10. But if you times that side by 3/10, you got to times that side by 3/10. You got to do the same thing to both sides. And then this cancels. Any number divided by itself is 1. Now, if you're confused, if you're saying, hey, 3/10 times 3/10 is 1. I know. This isn't 3/10 times 3/10. I'll explain it in video 1, part 1. Go watch part 1. Okay, so this is 1 times F. So that's F. And then put this over 1, multiply all this stuff. The bottom line is this is 9. I ain't got time. I ain't got time for this. Multiply fractions. Well, maybe I do have time. 21 times 3 is probably 63. And 1 over 10 is 7. And then 63 divided by 10 is 9. Okay, multiplying fractions. Go watch that video. Let's keep going with fractions. Let's say r divided by 6 allants equals 3/8. Let's say r divided by 6 allants equals 3/8. Again, I could have put an x here or a v or an a. When you get up in high school and geometry and things like that, angles, they start using the Greek letter of the alphabet. They don't use our alphabet. But the bottom line is whatever. I'm trying to get accustomed to not always having x. Okay, the operator is divide. When you see fraction bars mean divide. Fraction bars mean divide. Again, part one video, I put this on here. I said x divided by 2, that's like this number divided by this number. That's a divide by sign. This number divided by this number. This number divided by this number. That's where I got divided by from, is because of fraction bar. Because fraction bar. Okay, so the opposite of divide by 6 allants is times by 6 allants. I'm going to put that in the numerator where it belongs. If you times that side by 6 allants, I got to times that side by 6 allants. And then I know that 6 allants, again, that's going to be straight across to be a numerator. This will be a denominator. It's going to cancel. 6 allants divided by 6 allants is 1. 1 times r is r. And then 3 times 6 is the 18. 8 times ln is 88. And that's probably going to divide by, I think, just 2. So maybe 9 40/4. That would be my answer. Simplify your fraction. I'm not going to explain to you how to simplify fractions right now. The video is too long. I'll make a simplified fractions video and you can watch that. Okay, well, let's do another divide. Let's use y divided by, oh, what if they did a negative? Y divided by negative 1/2 equals, oh, what if this answer over here was negative and a fraction? Negative 3/4. Okay, guess what? I don't care. I'm going to do opposite operator, same number. Instead of divide by negative 1/2, I'm going to go times by negative 1/2. If you times that side by negative 1/2, you got to times that side by negative 1/2. Times by negative 1/2. And then negative times a negative is a positive, that cancels. And then 1/2 divided by 1/2 is 1. Positive 1 times y is just y. Over here, and multiply straight across your fractions. Negative times a negative is a positive. 3 times 1 is 3. 5 times 2 is 8. There's the answer, 3/8. 3/8. Okay. So that's going to be part 2. If you need to see part 3, my part 3 is going to be dealing with when they put the unknown quantity in the wrong spot instead of being all the way to the left. That's where we've solved them, was when the letter's all the way to the left. They're going to put them in the wrong spot. They can even put them on the wrong side of the equal sign, put them all the way over there. That's messed up. We got to fix it, so watch my part 3 video. In the meantime, never stop learning.